The story began when the galaxy was already full of whispers about humans. Other species spoke of them as unpredictable, wild, and almost impossible to read. Some called them primitive, others called them chaotic, but all agreed that humans were different. They were not like the Zyrex, who could understand each other perfectly through telepathy, or like the Lorith, who could anticipate every move of an opponent before it happened. Humans were a puzzle. No one could truly tell what they were thinking, even when they seemed calm. And curiosity, as it always does, brought trouble. The Galactic Council had decided it was time to meet the humans. Not to attack, not yet, but to observe and understand. They were cautious, of course. Every species had its secrets, but humans felt like a mystery wrapped in unpredictability. To represent their people, the Council sent the best telepaths they had, beings who could see into the minds of others as clearly as reading an open book. They were proud of their abilities, confident that no mind could hide from them. When the humans arrived at the meeting place, the first thing the alien telepaths noticed was how ordinary they looked. Their bodies were soft, fragile-looking compared to the steel-armored beings from other planets. Their eyes held no unnatural glow, no sign of psychic energy. They moved like everyone else, speaking in tones that were pleasant but not extraordinary. The humans looked calm, even polite, and at first the aliens felt a little disappointed. Where was the dangerous, chaotic mind that everyone had whispered about? The room for the meeting was enormous, a grand hall that glowed with soft light, floating high above the planet's surface. Delegates from dozens of species had gathered to witness the historic event. The humans entered slowly, keeping their posture relaxed, but their eyes scanned the room carefully. The alien observers tried to reach into their minds, expecting flashes of thoughts, memories, emotions, but the link was strange. It was tangled. It did not follow the patterns the telepaths were used to. Thoughts appeared and disappeared before they could understand them. Images came and went like broken signals. And then there was nothing. One of the telepaths, confident and slightly proud, stepped forward. This was the moment she had trained for her entire life. She reached out her hand toward the human, intending to touch his arm lightly, a gesture of connection and trust in her species. Usually, a touch like this was harmless, and it opened the mind fully. She expected to see memories, feelings, and intentions all laid bare before her eyes. But the moment her hand made contact, something went terribly wrong. The alien telepath froze. Her eyes widened in shock, and she felt a wave of heat and chaos surge through her. It was as if a storm had broken inside her own mind. Her own memories and thoughts became distorted, twisted, and painful. She tried to pull back, tried to disconnect, but the energy kept flowing through her. The air around them seemed to tremble. Then, with a scream that no one had ever heard before, she collapsed to the ground. Her body went limp, and the sound echoed through the hall, leaving everyone, humans and aliens alike, frozen in silence. The humans were stunned. They had not meant to cause harm, yet the room was full of panic. Scientists and medics rushed forward to tend to the fallen. Telepath, while the other aliens looked on with a mixture of fear and confusion. The human ambassador remained calm, his expression neutral, almost puzzled. He did not understand what had just happened, and yet, somehow, he felt responsible. Even though nothing had been intentional. After the initial chaos, the council began to examine the situation. The telepath survived, but she was shaken to the core. Her abilities, her mind, even her sense of reality had been affected. She could not explain what she had seen or felt. It was unlike anything any telepath had ever experienced. Meanwhile, the human delegate seemed untouched, as ordinary as ever. Yet there was something about him that could not be ignored. He was a riddle, a living paradox, And now the council realized that humans were far more dangerous than they had ever imagined, not because they fought with weapons, but because their minds were something no alien could easily control or understand. Whispers began to spread. What had the telepath experienced? What did humans hide in their thoughts? For the first time in the galaxy's history, one species could not be read, could not be predicted. And that realization terrified the council more than any weapon could. The moment the alien telepath touched the human, everything changed. What had been a calm, controlled situation exploded into chaos in an instant. The telepath froze, her eyes widening in shock as she screamed a sound no one in the hall could ignore. It was not a simple cry of pain. It was raw, unnatural, a noise that seemed to shake the air itself. The humans in the room flinched, but they did not run or panic. They stayed still, trying to understand what had just happened. It was impossible to look away. For the telepath, it felt as if her mind had been pulled apart. Thoughts and memories she had carefully stored, her sense of identity, even the rules that had always guided her abilities, seemed to unravel. She saw flashes, images, feelings, emotions, not her own, yet not completely foreign either. They were wild, stormy, and confusing, as if she had been thrown into a chaotic river and forced to swim in waters she could not control. Her body convulsed slightly before she collapsed, and the room fell completely silent, except for her fading screams. Medics rushed forward immediately, hovering above her with glowing instruments, checking her vital signs, scanning her mind, trying to calm her. Nothing worked at first. The telepath's own abilities, her mind-reading powers, had turned against her. It was as though she had glimpsed something that no alien brain could handle, something raw, alive, and unfiltered. And yet, the human had not moved a muscle. He simply stood there, eyes open, calm and observant, as if he had just watched a curious event unfold rather than being the cause of it. The other aliens in the room were equally shaken. They had all trained for first contact situations. All had learned to handle new species. But nothing in their experience prepared them for this. Every telepath who tried to read a mind had learned how to filter chaos, how to deal with unknown thoughts. But this human was different. His mind was like an untamed storm, impossible to read, impossible to anticipate. Even the most experienced alien delegates were stepping back, unsure how to act. Questions raced through the council members' minds. What had the human done? Was it an accident? Or had he somehow triggered something in the telepath's mind on purpose? But that seemed impossible. He had not touched her, not moved, not even made a sound. The telepath's collapse did not make sense, and the human's calm presence only made it stranger. This was not an attack, and yet it felt like one. The medics eventually managed to stabilize the telepath, but the damage was more than physical. Her mind was still in shock, her thoughts fractured and fragmented. She could not explain what she had felt, only that it had been overwhelming, terrifying, and beyond comprehension. She refused to speak for a long time, curling into herself, as the humans and other aliens watched quietly. The human delegate, seeing her struggle, stepped back, giving her space. He did not move closer. He did not try to comfort her physically. He simply observed, as if trying to understand what had just happened without interfering. The council held an emergency discussion. What had gone wrong? They had sent their best telepaths, their most skilled minds. Humans had been considered a primitive species, yet one single touch had almost incapacitated one of their most powerful members. Theories began to form quickly. Perhaps humans had mental defenses the aliens could not detect. Perhaps their thoughts were structured differently, in ways the telepaths could not anticipate. Some even suggested the impossible, that humans carried some kind of natural force, something living within them that reacted when probed. Meanwhile, the humans themselves were puzzled. They did not understand why the telepath had screamed and fallen. They had not intended to harm her. They had followed every instruction, remained calm, and behaved politely. Yet somehow, their presence alone had caused an extreme reaction. Slowly, a sense of awareness began to grow among the humans. They realized that their minds were not ordinary. They had survived hardships, wars, disasters, and countless dangers on their planet. Perhaps all that experience had made them stronger in ways the aliens could not see. The telepath, when she finally regained partial control over her abilities, could only mutter fragments. She spoke of a flood of memories, emotions, and visions that were not her own, yet so vivid that she could feel every detail. Other telepaths who witnessed her reaction grew cautious. They realized that attempting to touch a human mind could be dangerous. Even those who were confident in their skills began to question themselves. For the first time, humans were not simply beings to be studied. They were beings to be feared. From that moment, a quiet tension filled the room. Humans had always been underestimated, dismissed as primitive and simple. But now, their unpredictability was undeniable. The Council had assumed humans could be read, understood, and controlled, at least partially. That assumption had been shattered in seconds. One human, standing silently and calmly, had nearly broken the mind of a telepath trained for decades. And while the telepath recovered physically, the incident left an impression that would not fade. The humans were no longer just strange creatures to observe. They were powerful, unknowable, and alive in a way that no alien had ever experienced. Outside the room, discussions began in hushed tones. Scholars, military advisors, and even diplomats debated the implications. What did it mean that humans could resist telepathy? Could their minds be dangerous? Could they even pose a threat, not with weapons, but with their very consciousness? No one had answers yet, but one thing was certain. Humans had proven that they were more than the Council had ever imagined. Something about them was raw, unpredictable, and UNCO, NTA, INABLA, not even among the humans themselves, there was a sense of quiet realization. They had not intended to shock the telepath, but they had. And in doing so, they had revealed that their minds, their experiences, and even their very presence carried power. Power the galaxy did not understand. Power the Council had never accounted for. And for the first time, humans began to understand that they were not just survivors of their planet. They were something extraordinary, even if the universe had not yet recognized it. The incident became a turning point. The alien telepath would recover physically, but her mind remained cautious and fragile. The other delegates began to treat humans differently, with a mixture of curiosity, respect, and fear. And as the meeting continued, the humans themselves realized that they had just taken the first step in a story the galaxy would never forget. A story that began with a single touch and a scream that changed everything. After the incident, the room was quiet but tense. The alien telepath had survived, but she was changed. Her usual confidence was gone. Even sitting or standing felt difficult, as if the very effort of existing after that encounter was exhausting. She could barely speak, and when she did, her words were halting, fragmented, and full of fear. She told the medics and the Council that she had seen too much, and that her mind felt like it had been stretched in all directions at once. Nobody fully understood what she meant, but the look in her eyes told them that something extraordinary had just happened. Scientists immediately began running tests on the human who had caused the reaction. They were careful, nothing invasive, just scans of energy fields, brain activity, and basic vital signs. Every measurement returned normal. His heart rate was steady. His breathing was calm. His brain waves looked ordinary. And yet, the sensors that measured psychic and neural energy showed strange patterns, unusual fluctuations that the alien instruments could barely interpret. Some of the readings were off the charts, far beyond anything the scientists had ever seen. The human stood quietly while the tests were conducted, not fidgeting or resisting, not speaking unnecessarily. He was patient, aware of the attention, but not intimidated by it. The aliens watching him grew more unsettled. Every other species they had dealt with, no matter how strong or intelligent, had some predictable pattern, a way to read them, a way to influence them. Humans had none. It was as if their minds had a shield, or perhaps a storm, that no alien could penetrate. The telepaths whispered to one another, voices trembling. They had never encountered this before. The telepath, who had collapsed, was recovering physically, but she remained fragile. She refused to be touched again, even lightly, and she asked to be left alone for long periods. When asked to describe what she had experienced, she could only say, "It's too much, too deep, too alive." The other telepaths tried to comfort her, explained that this was new territory, that no one had expected humans to be so unpredictable. But her fear was infectious. Soon, the room filled with tension. Even the most confident members of the council began to hesitate, unsure how to proceed. Meanwhile, discussions in the council chambers began to shift. Humans, previously dismissed as primitive and not particularly threatening, were suddenly viewed differently. They were strange, yes, but dangerous in a way it was difficult to define. Not dangerous in terms of weapons or armies, though the council knew humans were capable of those too, but dangerous in terms of their minds, their thoughts, and their experiences. Every species that had ever encountered a human had underestimated them. And now the telepath had proved just how wrong that assumption could be. The human delegate, for his part, did not fully understand why the telepath had reacted the way she did. He knew he had not intended harm. In fact, he had felt only calm and polite curiosity when she touched him. Yet the reaction made him cautious. He sensed that his mind carried something alien observers could not handle: memories, experiences, and emotions that were so strong, so raw, that even the most advanced telepath could not comprehend them fully. Slowly, he began to realize that humans were different in ways the galaxy did not yet understand. The medics who studied the telepath noted something remarkable. Physically, she would recover, but her abilities would take time to return to normal. Every telepath in the council knew that a mind like hers, exposed to something beyond comprehension, could be permanently affected. They warned the council that further contact could risk more serious damage, possibly even death, if not handled carefully. The human, however, remained unharmed. This only deepened the mystery. How could a simple touch, a polite connection, almost destroy a mind trained for decades? Outside the chambers, whispers began to spread across the galaxy. Scholars debated the implications. Military advisors wondered if humans could be a threat without ever using a weapon. Diplomats questioned whether humans could be trusted if no alien could truly understand them. Even the historians began to dig into Earth's past, curious to see if there was anything that could explain this extraordinary resilience. They learned about natural disasters humans had survived, about wars that had wiped out entire populations, about diseases and famine that had never fully defeated them. Humans had endured, and somehow their minds had grown stronger because of it. The human delegate, despite being the center of so much attention, remained quiet and calm. He noticed how alien observers looked at him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. He sensed their caution, but did not feel threatened. Slowly, he began to understand that this was a first contact unlike any other. In most first contact scenarios, the aliens had experienced communication could be achieved quickly. Minds could be probed, intentions could be read, and diplomacy was straightforward. But humans were different. Their minds resisted examination, and this resistance seemed to carry power of its own. The telepath, over time, began to speak more. She described flashes of intense emotions, images, and memories that were not her own. Some were terrifying, others were confusing, and a few felt strangely familiar, almost like echoes of experiences she herself had not lived. She could not explain why these thoughts were so strong, or why they affected her so profoundly. Her colleagues, the other telepaths, grew cautious. Even those who were most eager to study humans began to fear them. A species that could shock and overwhelm trained telepaths was not to be taken lightly. As the council continued its work, it became clear that humans had abilities or traits that were not measurable by ordinary alien science. Their experiences, memories, and resilience created a mental landscape that no alien could easily navigate. It was a mix of raw emotion, survival instinct, and unpredictability that could not be controlled or predicted. Even the human delegate did not fully understand it himself. It was simply a part of being human, a product of history, culture, and the challenges his species had overcome. Slowly, a sense of respect began to form among some members of the council. Humans were no longer just a curiosity. They were something extraordinary. They were survivors, thinkers, and individuals whose minds carried depths the galaxy had never encountered before. And while there was fear, there was also admiration. The telepath who had collapsed became a symbol of this new understanding, a reminder that humans were not to be underestimated. The human delegate remained patient through all the discussions and testing. He noticed the way the aliens whispered to one another, the way their expressions shifted between fear, fascination, and respect. He realized that humans had always been underestimated, but now, for the first time, the galaxy could not ignore them. Humans had something that no alien could control, predict, or fully understand. And in that moment, the delegate understood that humans were not just a species among many. They were a force in their own right, defined not by power, but by the complexity and strength of their minds. By the time the meeting ended, the council had made one decision. Humans could not be ignored, and their minds could not be probed again without extreme caution. The telepaths would need time to recover, and the humans would need to be studied in ways that were safe and respectful. The incident had changed everything. It had shown the galaxy that humans were more than survivalists or warriors. They were unpredictable, resilient, and powerful in ways that no one could measure. For the humans themselves, the experience left a quiet awareness. They had not intended to harm anyone, yet they had demonstrated something profound. Their presence, their minds, and even their calmness carried a weight the galaxy did not yet understand. Slowly, they began to understand that humans were not ordinary. They were extraordinary. And the galaxy, for the first time, began to see them in a new light, a light that was filled with respect, caution, and a hint of fear. The story of that day would spread quietly at first, whispered between alien scientists, telepaths, and diplomats. It would be told as a tale of caution, a story of a human who could resist the mind of a telepath and leave a lasting impression. And the human delegate, standing quietly at the center of the storm, would realize that humans had just revealed something remarkable about themselves, that even in a galaxy full of wonders, their minds were a force unlike any other. After the shocking incident, the council realized that humans were unlike any species they had encountered before. They were not just physically different, not just technologically unique, but something deeper, something invisible. Their minds were unpredictable, layered, and powerful in a way the galaxy had never seen. A special investigation was quietly launched. one that was meant to explore the nature of human consciousness without causing harm. Scholars, scientists, and even military analysts participated, all eager to understand the truth, but also wary of what they might find. The human delegate continued to remain calm and composed, though he could sense the attention and caution around him. Every alien in the room seemed to hold back, hesitant to make a move that might trigger another unpredictable reaction. He understood their fear. After all, even he could feel the difference in perception. It was as if his mind was a storm that no one could fully navigate, something powerful and strange simply by existing. He did not intend to alarm anyone, yet the telepath's reactions had already set the tone. Humans were not ordinary, and the galaxy needed to treat them differently. Council began examining human history in detail, digging into records from Earth that spanned centuries. They had dismissed humans before, thinking their survival and growth were mere luck or primitive resilience. But as they studied, they began to see patterns. Humans had endured wars that should have wiped them out, famines that destroyed entire populations, and natural disasters that left continents uninhabitable. Every time they faced near destruction, they found ways to survive. Every time they were cornered or oppressed, they resisted. Their resilience was not just physical but mental, emotional, and cultural. Scholars noted something extraordinary. Human history was full of contradictions. At times, humans were kind and cooperative, and at other times, they were fierce and uncompromising. Their creativity, emotions, and adaptability combined in ways that made their behavior impossible to predict. Even the most skilled telepaths could not prepare for the mental and emotional complexity of a human mind. And that complexity was not learned. It was built, shaped by generations of survival, adaptation, and conflict. It was raw. It was real, and it was powerful. The more the council studied, the more they realized why the telepath had collapsed. Humans were not just unpredictable. They carried memories and experiences like a storm inside them, layers upon layers of life, struggle, and growth. Every human being was a living record of resilience. To probe that mind, to try to understand it too quickly, was overwhelming. The telepath had experienced just a glimpse of it, and that was enough to break her temporarily. The human's calm demeanor only made the effect stronger, as if he were aware of the storm within him, but could control it perfectly. Military analysts in the council began to worry. Humans did not need weapons to be dangerous. If one touch could nearly incapacitate a trained telepath, what might an entire population of humans represent? Could their minds themselves be a form of power, one that no alien race had encountered? The thought was unsettling. Traditionally, strength had been measured by armies, fleets, and technology. But humans introduced a new variable, mental. Resilience that could not be measured, predicted, or controlled. This was a form of strength that the galaxy had not prepared for. Meanwhile, the telepath who had collapsed was still recovering. She avoided contact, speaking little, and spending long hours in quiet reflection. Her colleagues began to treat her with care, knowing that one more attempt to study humans could be disastrous. Even after weeks, she could not fully articulate what she had felt. Fragments of images and emotions surfaced from time to time. Flashes of intense experiences, overwhelming memories, and feelings that were not her own. She realized that her mind had brushed against something far larger and more complex than anything she had ever known. The humans in the council room observed all of this carefully. They did not try to manipulate or intimidate anyone. They acted, as they always had, polite, calm, and measured. But the effect of their mere presence was undeniable. The aliens' fascination was mixed with fear, and the humans began to understand that their species carried a power the galaxy could not ignore. Their ability to survive, adapt, and endure had shaped their minds into something extraordinary, and it was now clear that even the most advanced telepaths could not fully comprehend it. The council debated what to do next. Some suggested creating controlled environments to study humans further. Others argued that this was too risky, that further exposure could harm telepaths or alien minds. The debate was heated, but the conclusion was clear. Humans could not be approached in the same way as other species. They required caution, respect, and understanding. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long, and the incident with the telepath proved that underestimation could be dangerous. Outside the investigation, whispers about humans began to spread across the galaxy. Rumors circulated among species that humans were more than they seemed. Some claimed that human minds could resist psychic probes. Others said that humans carried memories of suffering and survival that were impossible to read. Scholars speculated that the humans' experiences had shaped them into beings of resilience, unlike any other. Fear and respect began to grow in equal measure. The human delegate, observing the reactions around him, understood the truth. Humans had revealed themselves to the galaxy without intending to, simply by existing and remaining calm in the face of curiosity. The more the council explored, the more they saw patterns of resistance in human history that could explain what had happened to the telepath. Humans had faced extinction multiple times and survived. They had rebuilt civilizations from ruin. Their resilience was not just physical, it was emotional and mental. Humans were trained by life itself to endure, adapt, and persist, and those qualities were embedded in their minds in ways no alien species could anticipate. It was not deliberate. It was survival, and that made it all the more powerful. Some of the alien scholars began to hypothesize that the human mind was like a living network of energy, a force that had been shaped over centuries by extreme experiences. They speculated that attempting to connect with it too directly could be dangerous. And yet, the human delegate remained calm and observant, showing no sign of aggression. He had not intended to harm anyone. The effect of his mind on the telepath was a natural consequence of what he carried within him, his experiences, his resilience, his humanity. The telepath slowly began to regain confidence, though she remained cautious. She had learned that human minds were not puzzles to be solved easily. They were like storms, living and unpredictable. The other telepaths learned from her experience, realizing that contact with humans required patience, care, and respect. Humans had proven that they were not just another species to be studied. They were something extraordinary, something that could challenge even the most advanced minds in the galaxy. The human delegate, meanwhile, reflected on what had happened. He had always known that humans were resilient, capable of surviving hardships and enduring challenges. But now he understood that their resilience was more than survival. It was strength, a form of strength that could not be measured by technology or armies. It existed in their minds, in their ability to endure, adapt, and persist through challenges that would have overwhelmed others. And the galaxy had just caught its first glimpse of that strength. By the end of the investigation, the council had come to a new understanding. Humans were not to be underestimated, not because of physical power, not because of technology, but because of the resilience and depth of their minds. The incident with the telepath had been a warning, a demonstration of something the galaxy could not fully control or predict. And the human delegate, standing quietly amidst the alien observers, realized that this was the beginning of a story that would change the way the galaxy viewed humans forever. After the first incident, the council was cautious, but curiosity always drives beings to test boundaries. They decided to try again, to understand humans better, even though the last attempt had almost overwhelmed a telepath. A second telepath stepped forward, confident that the first failure had been a fluke. He had trained for years, mastering techniques to control and shield his mind, believing that no mind could surprise him. But what he was about to encounter would prove that. Humans were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The room was quiet, filled with tension. Observers from dozens of species watched closely, whispering nervously to one another. The human delegate remained calm, seated with his hands folded, eyes steady, showing no sign of fear or anticipation. There was an unspoken agreement. The human would do nothing aggressive, and the telepath would attempt contact with extreme care. But even with every precaution, the aliens felt uneasy. Something about humans had already proven dangerous, and now they were about to face it again. When the telepath extended his hand, the human made no move. He did not flinch, did not tense, did not speak. His presence alone seemed to carry a strange weight, an invisible pressure that the aliens could feel in the air. The telepath focused, channeling all his energy into preparing for contact. He had practiced for years for moments like this, shielding his mind, controlling his thoughts, anticipating every possibility. He was confident, until his hand touched the human skin. The moment of contact was instant and overwhelming. The telepath's eyes widened in shock. He tried to withdraw, but it was too late. The energy, the storm of experiences and emotions inside the human, surged into him like a tidal wave. He convulsed violently, unable to control his own mind, and shouted words that echoed through the chamber. They remember everything: the fire, the loss, the suffering. Every telepath in the room froze. No one had heard words like that before. And the meaning was clear. The human mind carried history, pain, resilience, and memories in ways that were almost physical in their intensity. The human remained still, calm and silent, watching as the telepath struggled. He did not move or react, yet his presence alone seemed to amplify the chaos. The alien observers gasped. Some shielded their own minds, sensing the dangerous storm of energy radiating from the human. It was no longer a simple mystery. Humans were a force that could overwhelm even trained telepaths, a species whose mental landscape was too vast and complex to navigate. Eventually, the telepath fell unconscious. Medics rushed forward to stabilize him, carefully keeping their distance from the human. The first telepath, who had recovered from the earlier incident, looked on with fear in her eyes. Even she, who had survived the initial contact, realized that the human's mind was far stronger than they had imagined. It was not about aggression or malice. It was about the depth, complexity, and intensity of what humans carry inside them. Each human carried the history of survival, suffering, and adaptation, and that alone was powerful enough to challenge an alien mind. After the telepath was stabilized, the council held an emergency meeting. They debated what they had just witnessed. Some members suggested that humans should be treated with extreme caution, even considered untouchable in terms of telepathic contact. Others argued that humans were still physically ordinary, and that the reactions were only mental, not a threat in the traditional sense. But even the skeptics could not deny the evidence. One human had demonstrated an ability to overwhelm trained telepaths. That alone demanded respect and caution. The human delegate, for his part, remained calm throughout. He did not celebrate, did not gloat, and did not attempt to explain what had happened. In a way, he did not need to. The events spoke for themselves. Humans, he realized, were being seen for what they truly were, not just survivors or fighters, but beings with minds, shaped by endurance, adaptability, and deep experience. Their strength was not in technology or brute force, but in the resilience of their consciousness. And that realization was slowly dawning on everyone in the room. As news of the incident spread quietly across the galaxy, opinions about humans began to shift. Scholars debated the implications, military analysts reassessed potential threats, and diplomats began to reconsider how humans should be approached in negotiations. A species that could mentally resist telepaths, overwhelm minds trained for decades, and remain calm and composed in extreme situations, was no longer a species to be underestimated. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they were also intelligent, composed, and remarkably strong in ways that the galaxy could not fully measure. Some telepaths argued that humans' mental power might even be protective. They speculated that it was built over generations, shaped by every challenge humans had faced on their home planet: wars, natural disasters, famine, disease, and societal struggles. Each challenge had strengthened the human mind, creating a form of mental resilience that was now visible in their presence. Attempting to probe or understand that mind directly was like trying to hold back a storm. Even a single human carried enough force to disrupt the carefully trained abilities of alien telepaths. The Council decided to halt direct telepathic contact with humans for the time being. Humans were to be observed, studied from a safe distance, and approached with caution. Further contact would only be allowed with extensive preparation, both for the humans' comfort and the safety of the alien telepaths. The decision was unanimous. Humans were not only a mystery, but a species that demanded respect. They had proven that their minds were not ordinary, that they carried strength, depth, and complexity far beyond what the galaxy had expected. Meanwhile, the human delegate reflected on what had occurred. He realized that humans were being seen for what they truly were, not just as survivors or curious species, but as a force of nature. Their minds, shaped by endurance and experience, carried something unique: the ability to remain calm in the face of chaos, to withstand pressure, and to confront challenges without losing control. And now, the galaxy had witnessed that force firsthand. The telepaths recovered physically, but they would not forget the encounter. Even the most confident among them realized that humans were not a species to be tested lightly. The incident became a lesson, a reminder that humans carried something extraordinary in their very being. It was not a weapon, not a technology, not an army. It was their mind, their resilience, their ability to endure and persist. That alone made them powerful dot across the galaxy. Whispers of caution grew louder. Humans were no longer considered primitive or simple. They were recognized as a species with depth, unpredictability, and strength. Diplomats began to plan differently. Scientists reconsidered their studies, and military leaders recalculated assumptions about potential threats. Humans had demonstrated that mental resilience could be as powerful, if not more powerful, than any physical force. The human delegate understood this truth deeply. He knew that humans had never relied solely on technology or weapons to survive. Their greatest strength had always been their ability to endure, to adapt, and to remain composed even in the most chaotic situations. The incident with the telepath had revealed this truth to the galaxy, and for the first time, humans were being seen in a new light, as a species that was extraordinary, not for what they could destroy, but for the strength they carried within. Themselves, by the end of the encounter, the Council had learned a critical lesson. Humans were not just another species to study or control. They were unpredictable, resilient, and powerful in ways that no alien could fully understand. The telepath's experience and the second telepath's collapse had proven that humans carried within them a force that could challenge even the most advanced minds. And in that realization, the galaxy began to see humans not as primitive or weak, but as something remarkable, beings whose minds alone could change how the universe viewed them. After the second telepath's collapse, the Council realized that humans could not be approached the same way as other species. They were not just another intelligent life form to study or negotiate with. They were something else entirely. Something unpredictable, powerful, and alive in a way that no alien mind could fully comprehend. The humans had not fought or attacked, yet their very presence had proven overwhelming. This revelation sent waves through the galaxy, changing the way every species viewed them. The human delegate observed the reactions around him carefully. He did not feel superior, nor did he feel fear. He simply understood what had happened. Humans were resilient. Humans had survived centuries of hardship, disaster, and conflict. Their minds had adapted, grown, and strengthened. It was not something learned in a laboratory or taught by technology. It was the result of generations of living through extremes, of facing what others could not endure, and of emerging stronger each time. This resilience was not visible at first glance, but when revealed, it was undeniable. The Council began to implement new rules regarding human contact. Telepaths were prohibited from attempting direct mental connections unless absolutely necessary, and even then, extreme precautions had to be taken. Observers and scholars were instructed to study humans indirectly, using instruments that measured behavior, communication, and energy patterns from a distance. The message was clear. Humans could not be read like a book, and any attempt to do so could be dangerous. Every alien present understood that this was not a threat in the conventional sense. It was a force rooted in endurance, adaptability, and the complexity of thought. Even as the Council adjusted its policies, the humans themselves became aware of a new reality. For the first time, they were being seen not as primitive or weak, but as a species with extraordinary potential. The incident with the telepaths had revealed something fundamental. Their minds, shaped by countless generations of struggle and survival, were resilient beyond measure. Their very thoughts carried strength. They could remain calm in chaos, make decisions under pressure, and adapt to situations no alien could predict. It was not about fighting or conquering. It was about the innate power of being human. The telepaths who had collapsed recovered physically, though their mental state remained fragile for some time. They struggled to articulate what they had experienced. Fragments of visions, emotions, and memories came in bursts. Images of survival, fear, determination, and loss. They could not identify whose experiences they were seeing, but the intensity was undeniable. Even after days and weeks, the echoes of the human mind lingered. Other telepaths, watching and listening, began to approach humans with caution, recognizing that even the simplest interaction could carry profound consequences. Across the galaxy, word spread quietly but persistently. Humans were no longer considered ordinary. Scholars speculated on their resilience. Military analysts debated their unpredictable potential. Diplomats began to rethink strategies and policies for engagement. Humans had demonstrated that their power lay not in weapons, not in technology, not in fleets or armies, but in their very existence. Their minds, shaped by centuries of experience, carried lessons, strength, and adaptability that no alien species had ever faced. And for the first time, the galaxy acknowledged that humans were extraordinary. The human delegate reflected on what had happened and what it meant for his species. Humans had always survived against the odds. They had rebuilt societies after disasters, thrived after wars, and grown stronger after challenges that might have destroyed others. Their strength was not visible at first glance, but it was always present, quietly enduring and growing. What the telepaths had experienced was only a glimpse of this deeper resilience, a glimpse that had shaken even the most confident beings in the galaxy. The Council, now cautious and respectful, began to consider humans in a new light. Diplomats suggested cautious collaboration rather than direct examination. Scholars advocated observation rather than interference. Telepaths understood that human minds could not be forced or read, only respected. And in every discussion, the same thought surfaced. Humans were a force, not because of aggression, but because of their resilience, adaptability, and depth. Their minds were strong, their spirit unyielding, and their presence transformative. Human Delegate realized that the galaxy was beginning to recognize the truth. Humans were not to be underestimated. Their ability to endure, to adapt, and to remain composed in extreme situations made them a species unlike any other. They carried the weight of their history, their experiences, and their struggles inside their minds, and that weight gave them a quiet but formidable strength. Even without weapons or technology, humans possessed a power that could not be ignored. Back on Earth, humans continued their daily lives, unaware of the full impact of their presence in the galaxy. They lived, worked, and survived, as they always had. But the incident with the telepaths had revealed something important. Humans were extraordinary, and the universe had finally taken notice. They were no longer considered primitive or weak. They were a species whose resilience and mental strength demanded respect. Their history, their experiences, and their ability to endure had shaped them into something unique, a force the galaxy could not easily predict or control. For the Council, the lesson was clear. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but their unpredictability was not chaotic. It was deliberate, grounded in experience, and shaped by resilience. The galaxy had encountered countless intelligent species, but none had the depth, adaptability, and endurance of humans. Telepaths, scholars, and leaders all recognized that humans carried within them a power that could influence events, challenge assumptions, and inspire respect. Even without intending to, humans had changed the way the galaxy viewed intelligence. Strength and potential. The human delegate stood quietly, observing the reactions of the aliens around him. He did not need to demonstrate power or explain his species' abilities. The events had spoken for themselves. Humans had revealed their extraordinary minds through calm presence, through endurance, and through a history of survival that no alien could ignore. The galaxy had learned that strength did not always come from weapons or technology. Sometimes it came from the quiet resilience of a species that had survived against all odds. As the Council continued to discuss, the human delegate realized something profound. Humans had always been underestimated, always thought of as weak or simple. But their minds, shaped by generations of survival, held a power that could withstand any challenge. Their calmness in chaos, their ability to adapt, and their mental strength made them extraordinary. The galaxy had only just begun to recognize this truth, and the impact would ripple for generations to come. In the following days, the incident became a case study for scholars, telepaths, and diplomats. Humans were now viewed as a species of potential, one whose strength lay not in aggression, but in mental resilience and adaptability. The story of the telepath's collapse and the human delegate's calm presence spread quietly through the galaxy, becoming a symbol of caution, respect, and admiration. It was a lesson. The most extraordinary power does not always come from force. Sometimes it comes from endurance, experience, and the ability to remain composed when others cannot. The human delegate, standing silently amid the Council, understood the full significance of what had occurred. Humans had been underestimated for centuries, but now their presence was undeniable. Their minds, shaped by history, experience, and survival, carried a force that no alien species could predict or fully comprehend. And in this realization, a new chapter began, one in which humans were no longer just another species in the galaxy, but a species whose strength, resilience, and depth could not be ignored. By the end of the investigation, the Council had made one clear decision. Humans were to be treated with respect, observed with caution, and never underestimated again. Their minds, their experiences, and their resilience were a force unlike any other. They had proven that their power was not measured by weapons, fleets, or technology, but by their ability to endure, adapt, and remain calm even in the most extreme situations. Humans had changed the galaxy's perception forever, and for the human delegate, the realization was simple but profound. Humans were extraordinary, not because they sought power, but because they had survived, endured, and grown stronger against every challenge. The galaxy had finally seen what humans had always known, that their minds, their resilience, and their ability to remain calm under pressure were a force that could not be ignored, controlled, or underestimated. Humans had revealed themselves not through aggression, but through quiet strength, and the universe would never be the same again.